In today's video, we are going to look at a stack of different giants and unconventional ones that you should consider using in your very next Dungeons & Dragons campaign or one-shot. So, let's jump straight in and roll that intro. Hello everyone and welcome back to the TheDMSide. Now, before we jump straight into the video, I do want to show off just a couple of purchases that I have made recently that have finally arrived. And the very first one is I have been slowly collecting these, the alternate covers for the books. I absolutely love them. Some of them are way too expensive to get now. Volo's Guide to Monsters is insanely expensive, and a few of the other ones are creeping up. But I did manage to get my hands on the Tyranny of Dragons alternate cover, which I absolutely love. I know the story itself does lack a lot of, well, it's not very friendly to new players, but to be fair, this was their very first adventure into 5th edition, and so there are a lot of glaring problems. However, there are actually a lot of amazing things you can do in this story if you're ready to kind of cherry pick and take things from it, which I'm considering doing in a future series. The second thing that I managed to pick up is another alternate cover, and it is of the Art and Arcana, the history of Dungeons and Dragons. Now, I'm not going to unbox this right here, right now, because it's not the channel, not the video, but it's an awesome pickup. I absolutely love this artwork. I actually got a dice set that is a similar vein of art style. And so if you want to see what's inside of it, I'll put pictures up on the TheDMSide Instagram, or just jump onto any other YouTube video. I'm sure there's plenty of unboxings, or just Google images it really. But if you want to look at mine in particular, head over to the Instagram page because it's very, very cool. And finally, the third thing that I did purchase, now I am a Critical Role fan. I am slowly catching up with Season 2. And so I have finally got my hands on the Mighty 9 miniatures that they have released. I picked some of these up in my local game store not long ago, actually. I was pretty impressed that they had them, so really happy to have those. And I also was able to pick up the Vox Machina ones, so I will also have pictures of those on the Instagram. I really do enjoy painting minis, and I'd love to do some more painting on the actual channel. It's really just finding the time, and to be fair, I'm a complete novice, so I actually don't think there'd be any value for anyone watching me paint terribly. But at the same time, if you want to feel good about being a bad painter, maybe I will do those videos and you can feel better about the fact that my painting is not that great and yours is probably better than you think. Alright, so you've probably jumped ahead to this part of the video because you're actually here for the monsters, not to watch me go off on about the things that I've purchased. So, in today's video, as you already know, we are looking at the giants. We're continuing through our monster series. So this will be a video similar to last week's, where it wasn't actually about the more well-known dragons, your chromatic and your metallic dragons. It's actually about the unconventional giants. So I won't be talking about the cloud giants, your fire giants, your hill giants, and the rest. I'm actually going to be pointing out ones that I think are really cool and they fall within the giant category. So, like this video if it's something that you're interested in, and to help out the channel, subscribe if you aren't subscribed and you would like to keep up with this series and future series. Share it with a friend who might find some value, and as always, please comment at the very end of the video what was your favorite giant. Let's get into number one. The very first giant that we're going to be looking at today is known as the Formian. Now, these creatures were once considered to be the most beautiful of all the races. They had an intelligence that rivaled those of the greatest wizards, and on top of that, they had this uncanny ability to manipulate and pull at the strings of the magical arcane weave itself. Because of these boons that they had, the Formians had an ego larger than life. They saw themselves as the peak, the epitome of mortal beings. And on top of that, they saw themselves as the rightful owners, I guess you could say, of magic itself. And so they sought after it. This greed for the command of magic grew and festered within their hearts and had this dark, black, grotesque spot hidden deep within them. And because of that, they tried to band together and take the Feywild itself, where they, at the time or through most lore, originally actually came from. But in doing that, the Fey elves of the Feywild banded together to cast them down. And through means that are unclear currently, they were actually able to defeat the Formians. And so they were sent to the material plane, where they now hide in the Underdark, planning their revenge. Upon their defeat, they took on this grotesque curse that forced their bodies to change and form into this disgusting creature, where they lost all their beauty, their magic cut off from them, unable to use it anymore, but able to curse those around them. So now they plan and plot deep underground until they are able to once again regain what was once theirs. The Formians themselves are a really great giant race or creature that you can really put into any campaign that you would like. I would recommend them personally for a mid to high level, but you could put them in at a low level, knowing that they aren't really going to engage in battle, but more you're going to get the benefit of a particular curse that they have. They're really great for your underground adventures, so I obviously am thinking, if we're going off official D&D stories, you could work with your Out of the Abyss adventure, where your players are trudging through the Underdark, trying to find their way out after escaping from Chapter 1, which I won't ruin for anyone who has not played that yet. But imagine your players who are trudging through the Underdark, and they come across this creature and fall victim to its evil eye curse, where they now are sprouting extra mouths, hands, limbs, warts that grow off of their face. I think it's really fun to play around with a minor curse, because at the end of the day, they can either get a cleric to remove the curse, but should they not have that in the Underdark, then it comes down to them constantly trying to roll every morning to break free from it. So it's not a terrible curse because it lasts forever, but it could have consequences that would ruin their charisma checks. Say it's the bard who falls victim to it, or the charismatic paladin. It is a very interesting curse because it's not permanent, which I really do like about that. One of the difficult things with permanent curses is it can really ruin and change your players' characters, which can actually be a bit negative towards how they want to play the game. So a minor curse that is temporary can actually be really fun, and it can involve another quest where they have to go and find a cleric or find materials to undo what has been done. So check out the Formians, throw them into a game. They are really interesting creatures, and if you want to bump them up for a higher level campaign, you could actually have your players go to the Feywild and be protecting or helping fight off a band of Formians that has decided that today is the day that they go back and they try and reclaim what was once theirs. And if you really want to push it to the higher levels, I would recommend thinking, what would happen should a Formian trick your players into removing the curse that has been set upon it? It returning to its former beauty, having all of this magical ability to pull the weave in a way that others, as far as we know, never could. It took all the elves of the Fae to band against the Formians, to cast them down. So imagine your players bringing one back. That could potentially be your BBEG. That could be a great power that they have to stop later on because they unleashed it. So consider them and throw them in just for fun. All right, so dialing it back a bit for our lower level campaigns, if you want to include giants in your story, I would suggest the Cyclops. These creatures are said to have been born from the gods of the giants. However, they don't really have any ties to a god in the giant pantheon. Now, these simple one-eyed creatures are extremely dangerous in terms of their brute strength. They are huge creatures that have this almost uncanny strength where they can lift hundreds of tons, and so are very hardy as well. So it can take a while to actually put down for your lower level players. But if you have a creative party, these creatures are not the most intelligent and can actually be convinced of many different things should they speak some form of broken common, or maybe one of your players speaks giant. As a DM, it's always good to make sure that there is some ability to have conversation with any creature in general, unless obviously it's extremely clear that they do not have a language in particular. Now, your players can also convince that these Cyclops that they themselves are gods. Yes, your clerics, paladins, your wizards, your warlocks, anything that can cast a spell basically with a high enough charisma check can convince them that they are indeed a god that walks among the earth. They're very similar to Luke Skywalker helping convince the Ewoks that C-3PO is a vengeful god.
But I do believe they think I am some sort of god.
So, in your very next campaign, consider throwing one of these in protecting a mini horde of sorts and see if your players try to fight it and defeat this large, strength-worthy creature, or if they decide to try and convince it that they are a god themselves. DMs, our next creature is a classic and your players have probably already come up against them. However, if they haven't, I would highly encourage throwing it at them sooner than later. These creatures are known as the Trolls. Now, Trolls have a very interesting ability where throughout the battle, they will regain hit points. So for your lower levels, 1 through to, well, really 3 or 4, they're going to be pretty tricky and really difficult to deal with should your players not have access to either fire damage or acid damage. If a troll takes this damage, then it will not get its regain ability of health throughout that turn. Now, if your players behead the troll, I believe that does stop it from rising beyond death. But should they just cut it down and, cut its body open and slash it a bit, maybe that's some magical wounds, over time it will regain hit points and come back to life, only to pursue them and attack them once more. So just be aware that, even a torch can light a flame. So let your players have that knowledge that this is going to assist them in finishing the troll themselves. But moving on from that, there are different variations of trolls now, so you really can build quite the hard, difficult encounter for your higher levels. If you'd like a video on all the different variations, comment down below and I'll get working on that for you. But moving on to just your more generic troll, it's really important to remember as well that they aren't always just looking for food. Trolls love gold just as much as the next NPC. And they will, in some cases, trade gold for your players' lives because they know that they can use that gold essentially to gain more food or lure others in to eat them later on, and also just this greed that seems to harbor within them. So let your players have that knowledge, because in battle, if it starts to turn against them, they need to know that perhaps today they pay for their lives, opposed to TPKing and the game being over. And finally, on this topic of trolls wanting food, trolls actually are well known to be working with other evil creatures such as ogres and your hags and your giants. So imagine sending out sending out a troll to actually hunt down and capture the players alive for a hag that wishes to speak with them, or for a giant that is seeking them out. And what I'm trying to get at here is that trolls definitely have a stereotype that they are just these beasts to be killed, but they are relatively intelligent, and so they should be played that way. So your players may have come across a troll already and dealt with it quite easily, but now that you have a little more information on how to use them, I'd suggest doing it one more time. Alright DMs, if you want something that is just a little bit more dangerous than the troll, because your players are now at a level where trolls are, well, let's face it, they're a little bit easy, and you want to have something that has a bit more of a magical ability, then this creature is for you. It is known as the Oni. Yes, it is the boogeyman of D&D. These creatures have the natural ability to shape change, and so what they'll do generally is they will enter into a society, a small village usually, or in some cases a large city because it is easier to hide, and they will take on the form of just a regular person who lives in the area, and slowly but surely they will get to know everyone. They will take down details of the city or the village, and eventually people will begin to go missing because Oni will definitely take the lives of those around them. They will eat the humans around them. They will eat the elves, the dwarves, whoever it is, the humanoids. But most of all, these boogeymen of D&D love to eat children. These creatures will usually align themselves with other evil entities such as your hags, your vampires, even just evil necromancy wizards that are living within a city. They will usually make deals with them where they get quite a lavish lifestyle so they can enjoy their money and the benefits of all that it is of being a noble, while they go about their business of taking the lives of those around them. They have spellcasting abilities, so they definitely pose a bigger threat to your parties. I would recommend this for something of 6 or higher level, because they are very difficult to find to begin with, and then once you do find them, they can put up quite the fight and escape relatively easy. If you want to make it harder, I would obviously suggest, making it just difficult to get to them, building up a little army that goes along with them. They're going to have some resources if they've aligned themselves with a hag, maybe even a coven of hags, or the actual necromancer from the town that your players are searching and seeking out. The Oni may be hired to actually murder your players before they get too close to the truth. These creatures are amazing, and I do believe that you can really hone in on a gothic story for them. Throw them in a Strahd Ravenloft campaign, and you are going to be very happy with your choices. So, throw them into your high-level campaigns, and if you are still on those lower levels, just put them in the bank for later on, because they're definitely worth playing around with. The next creature that we have is the Eton. Now, these creatures in lore actually have ancient ties to orcs far back, pretty much making them like 3 times removed cousins of some kind to the orcs. It's not entirely clear, but what we do know is that they are huge creatures. They are very strong. They are very hardy, similar to your Cyclopses. However, instead of having 1 eye, they actually have 4 because they've got 2 heads. And so one of the great things about them is that they are really amazing guards, setting them as guard posts for giant strongholds, because while one head sleeps, the other can keep guard. And so these creatures actually can't really be surprised because they have this heightened passive perception. On top of that, however, the Etons do take the trait from the Cyclops as being not as intelligent and easily swayed. These creatures cannot stand talking too much with others because they spend their entire lives speaking with one of their own. The only time that they ever get quiet and peace for themselves is when the other head is actually sleeping. So if your players do engage with them, they should probably keep the conversation short, because too much confusion, too much complication, and these Etons will generally just run into a rage just to get some silence by killing these little pesky humanoids and adventurers that are in front of them because they've come into their area and they are making a ruckus. But the Etons are a really good step up from your Cyclops and not too difficult for your party, so as a giant would be. So I would suggest, your mid-level sort of range, or just to really change up the sneaking into a giant's hold and keeping them as your guards. And of course, for our honorable mentions, we can also have the giants themselves. Now, one of my favorite things is we have the classic giants that were released in the player's monster guide. But then also in Storm King's Thunder, the campaign book, they actually had these variations for each different type of giant, which I absolutely love. So at the end, check out these videos on this side or these videos on this side. Have a great day. I hope you enjoyed this video. Comment your favorite giants down in the comments below. And next week, we are going to be looking at the Fey creatures. See you then.